Hello everybody, my name is Kay and welcome to my Capstone 1 project presentation. It is going to be focused on childcare availability in British Columbia from 2018 to 2024. And I picked this topic because it is something I am familiar with. I am a early childhood educator currently, and I am very new to data analysis, so I wanted to pick something that I know. Now, a little bit of background about childcare in BC. We have different types of facilities. They can be licensed or unlicensed, and those who are licensed can receive support and funding from the BC government. And there are also different types. You can have group childcare, which is usually in a center, provided to specific ages, age groups of children, and there are usually multiple staff members in each center. Or we can have family childcare, which is typically in the provider's home, and the homeowner is the childcare provider, and the children in the group can be different ages. So my goals for this project were as follows. I wanted to look at the trends for childcare capacity in BC. I wanted to see if there are any differences in availability in different regions of BC. And I also wanted to look at different types of childcare. The source that I used was a specific data set called Childcare Facilities and Spaces Over Time, and it is available at BC Data Catalog, and I have a link for that here. This data set is not complete. It only focuses on licensed childcare providers and only those who participate in government-funded programs. But if different sources are to be trusted, these are about 90% of all facilities, so this should be representative enough. I did need to clean up the data before I started to visualize it and make conclusions. So for example, in the original data set, the names of the columns were inconsistent, so you can see there are underscores in some of the titles and spaces in others, also they're quite long. All of the values were imported as floats, so I had to do something about that. And there were some columns that I just did not need for my analysis, such as the fiscal year and also information about school districts. Now, I started my analysis by looking at the overall growth of childcare facilities and childcare spaces in BC for the whole period that I had data for. And we can definitely see that childcare availability has been increasing quite steadily. And one interesting thing that I noticed is that there was a drop around the middle of each year, so during the summer. And this can mean that maybe some childcare facilities just close in summer, or maybe there are different other reasons. I am not quite sure, but it is an interesting point to look at. Now, next thing I did was I looked at the same data, but for each of the different regions, and there were 6 different regions in the data set. And we can definitely see that the metro region has by far the highest numbers, both in terms of facilities and in terms of childcare spaces. There is some growth in each region, but I found out that this type of graph does not really represent that very well. So next thing I looked at was the growth in each region in terms of percentage. And now it's much more obvious that all regions demonstrate growth, and in 3 of them, the growth is really very, very high. The growth rate is really very, very high, higher than overall for the province, and those are Fraser Valley, Kootenay-Boundary, and Thompson-Okanagan. And then 3 other regions demonstrate lower growth rates than overall for the province. We can also see that in each region, the number of childcare spaces grows faster than the number of childcare facilities, which means that either the newer facilities have more spaces or existing facilities expand the number of spaces over time. Next thing I wanted to do was look at the difference between different types of childcare, and I only did that for the provincial level. It can be done for all regions, obviously, but I did not want the Capstone projects to be too expansive. So first of all, I looked at the growth in the number of childcare facilities, and we can see that both group facilities and family facilities demonstrate growth, but there are definitely many more group facilities than childcare facilities, and they're growing faster. And the last thing I wanted to do was look at the different types of childcare spaces, and for this, I only picked the latest data available, so September 2024 in BC, so just the provincial level. So here we can see that the most spaces exist for ages from 30 months old up to school age, which would be 5 years old. There are definitely fewer spaces for children who are smaller, so 0 to 3 years old. And there are very few spaces in multi-aged groups. So to sum up, we can see that there is steady growth in all regions of British Columbia, so the number of both childcare facilities and childcare spaces has increased and continues increasing. There are different growth rates depending on the region, and Fraser Valley is growing the fastest and Vancouver Island is growing the slowest. Now, the number of spaces is definitely the largest in the metro region, but that is understandable because the population of that region is the largest and the demand for childcare is very, very high. Now, there is a trend toward the facilities growing larger, as we can see that the number of childcare spaces is growing faster than the number of childcare facilities. Group-based childcare is growing faster, more significantly than family-based care. However, family-based care is still an important option. And most available childcare spaces are for preschool and school-age care. And there are limited spaces for infants and toddlers, which may mean that there is less demand for that, but it can also mean that there are new opportunities for newer childcare providers who might want to expand in that area. Now, moving forward, some things that I could do to improve this project and to expand it. First of all, it would definitely be a good idea to incorporate more data, and especially demographic data such as population growth, incomes, birth rates. That would make this analysis more meaningful, and it would actually have some practical value. The visualizations could definitely be improved, so I could make them more interactive. I could create a map to display access to childcare in geographical regions. I could also create a dashboard, so all the insights would be visualized in one place. And the last thing that I could do in the future would be to implement some type of forecasting. So I could try to predict demand for childcare in the future and identify possible areas for improvement. Now, to conclude this presentation, I will just very quickly move through my code and show you a little bit of a code review. So just a very quick code review. This is what my notebook looks like. And I used pandas to prepare my data. I looked at the data types, saw that there were definitely some null values in there, and that most of the data types were floats, which was strange, and I need to fix that. Looked at the first rows and the last rows of the table, dropped the empty values, and then just looked at some ways that I could improve the data and make it more usable to me. So there were some columns that I just did not need. I would have to drop that. I would have to change the data types because I can see that all of those were imported as floats and they were definitely integers, so I had to change that. I also looked at the types of original data that I had, checked that there were just two for the province and for the districts. I renamed the columns so the names would be shorter, more concise, more easier to work with. There was a lot of data for different school districts, which I did not need for my analysis, so I just summed all of those up. So I would only have data for different regions, but not for school districts. So I checked that we now have the same number of entries for each region. Check that, yes, we do have 6 regions to work with now. And I separated the data for the province overall, for British Columbia, and a different data set for the regional data. Then I started to visualize the data, so I used OK for that. And first thing that I did was just look at the overall growth, as I mentioned before, in British Columbia, and I just used simple line charts for that. Then I did a similar thing for all the regions, and you can see that you can just look at as many regions as you want. But since this is not very easy to understand, I wanted to calculate the percentages for each region and just created this table that would have percentage growth rates for the province overall and for each region as well, and then visualize this as a bar chart. So next, I group the data for group facilities and family facilities and visualize this as a simple line chart as well. And then the last thing I wanted to look at was just for one line in my data set really, and that would be the data for BC only and for the last month that I had available. So that would be September 2024. So it would be just this one line just to see how many childcare spaces were available at the time. And I used the pie chart to visualize that. And this concludes my presentation of my Capstone project. Thank you for your attention.